Are you ready to break through the mental barriers holding you back? Welcome to the Mind Mastered Secrets of Excellence with Don Grant. Since 2001, Don has been guiding elite athletes like PGA Tour champions, Olympians, and world champions, and everyday individuals toward peak performance. With a proven track record, including helping Vijay Singh win the 2008 FedEx Cup, and her PGA Tour clients averaging a 219% increase in earnings. Dawn knows what it takes to succeed. She's the inventor of the Mind Mastered app, author of 7 Strokes in 7 Days, a sought-after speaker worldwide, and the proud owner of Amelia Shotgun Sports in Northeast Florida. Join us as we dive into powerful strategies, inspiring interviews, and Dawn's unique insights to help you excel in every area of your life, sports, career, relationships, and beyond. And now, here's your host, Don Grant.
All right. I have Jacques Shelton here, who is well known throughout our community and a world traveler. He's even in Hungary right now. So I'm grateful that you chose to go ahead and do this interview while you're traveling abroad. And for those folks that don't necessarily know who you are, can you give us a little background info?
Sure. Thank you for having me, Dawn. I am I guess, third generation Amelia, born and raised, and went to high school and college, University of North Florida, did kind of my military career for 4 or 5 years, and then went on to be a part of a company called Safariland. I was a VP of sales for them for 17 years, not all of that, but most of that. And then another couple of companies in the tactical industry, and currently kind of tabled all of that to kind of reset my life and chase some of my dreams and journeys, in which kind of holds us to the current position in Budapest.
Very cool. Very cool. So most of your professional experience has been related to firearms, right?
In a roundabout way, yes, it has.
Yeah. I had an employee that worked for Safari at one point. He was a manager of my shotgun club for a little bit. Yeah. So what are some of your highlights? What are some of your accomplishments that you've achieved? Because we're going to end up chatting about the mastery of the mind and how that can help a person to be successful and have excellence in their life. So what are some of your highlights and accomplishments?
I don't know. I'm sure there's plenty. I guess I'm sure it's segmented around which part of the life had challenges and successes that resulted in such. Graduating OCS with honors was probably one of my highest accomplishments. Officer Candidate School, Fort Benning. And I don't know, I think I've always been a little bit of a goal-oriented person. So I think that through whatever season of life that I had presented, whatever challenge was probably culminated with whatever achievement that was, whether that was OCS or whether that was being deployed and making it back home, or leading troops in Iraq, and then being successful within the business space kind of post my military career. I think any one of those things, and probably some ones I'm not even thinking about right now, have been pretty cool highlights of my life.
When you were young or even going to college, what did you feel you were going to do when you grew up?
Not whatever I ended up doing, that's for sure. I think there was a very, very good chance that I was going to be some sort of alphabet agency guy. So I was probably the poster child for it in college. So I did all the right things. I was a little older, so I kind of had a leg up on everyone. Instead of being 21, 22, I was 25, 26 when I got my bachelor's, so a little later in life. And so I really thought that I was going to do any of those things, FBI, DEA, Secret Service, any agency that would have me. And as life would have it, it just didn't turn out that way. Longer story shorter, I really ended up kind of getting my personnel file flat, and kind of inappropriately or wrongly, I guess. It wasn't correct, but it didn't matter how or why it happened. It just happened every time I would file for an application to be kind of all the things that I had trained to be, wanted to be, studied to be. It got shut down. So after a year and a half of this, I actually had a friend of mine look into it, and come to find out, I had that flag in my personnel file that was inaccurate, but it didn't matter. Like I said, why? It just was there. So huge reset and disappointment in my life. Giant one, because I thought there was no way that I could be not doing that. So I probably cried in my beer for 24 hours, and then
Yeah, right.
next probably 36 hours, I was in the Army recruiter's office saying that I wanted to go to OCS. And then a few months later, I was gone. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, as far as absolute 100% certain career move that I thought was going to happen that didn't happen, that opened up a different door that was, I wouldn't even say arguably better. It was definitely better for me.
And why is that?
I think I would have just, as much as I wanted to do it, I think I would have been miserable after a while. The more I learned about myself throughout life, I understand that was just not for me. I enjoyed my military career, but that was also not a career, like 25-year thing for me. It was a stepping stone. It opened up doors for me between having education and then having my military career, especially combat military career officer experience. It really just opened up the business world pretty fully for me. So it was a beautiful unfolding that I didn't see coming.
Yeah. So how many years then were you in the military?
5.
Okay. And you did say you were an officer because you went to school. Is that correct? Is that how?
Since I kind of did it backwards, I got my college first because I did that other career path. So I was able to kind of walk right into the officer candidate program. Not quite that easy, but I went to basic training and then to OCS and then officer basic course, and then spent 4 years in Alaska. 2 of those were in Iraq. So it was an intense 4 or 5 years, but it was worth it because it reshaped kind of how I viewed life and life experience and what's important in life and what isn't important in life. At least as I see it anyway.
Yeah. So tell us about that. What did it teach you about those things?
I think growing up on Amelia, I mean, you were kind of somewhat sheltered. I mean, you kind of live on an island, and it's awesome and cool, and not awesome and cool, depending on how you want to look at that. But to get outside of that and experience it much more than North Florida, and really get into a place in life where life and death was every day, not just for yourself, but for others. Making the right decisions and not making the wrong ones were paramount. You couldn't mess up. If you did, people didn't go home. So I think after doing that intensely for longer than I expected, one of the longest deployments of any unit in modern history, just happenstance, just happened to be mine. But that's the way it worked out. It really teaches you a lot about yourself and what your capabilities are and what you're capable of. So I think after you experience that, you come back to what, quote unquote, real life, and you can really quickly ascertain that some of the problems that you thought were significant really aren't. And then you can also understand some of the ones that are, that maybe somebody that hadn't had those experiences in their life, really doesn't see it the same way. But for me, that's probably one of the most valuable things I ever got out of the military, was understanding what was important, like literally what was important for life and for others and for yourself, and what wasn't. It serves me greatly.
Would you say that mindset has stayed the same, like, level of strength as time has gone on since you left the military, or have you wavered on it and then had to get back on track? Meaning, like, the not taking things for granted and such. How's that worked for you? Has it been consistent since you got out of the military, or have you really had to keep up on it and be mindful?
I think it's a little bit innate in me to start with, but it hasn't fled too much. I've certainly had my fair share of challenges throughout life, but the foundational pieces I don't think have wavered too much. It's always kept me kind of back to a good neutral. So I've been super thankful for that. But challenges in life, whether that be personal or professional or whatever that may be that presents itself, those foundational pieces that I ended up getting at somewhat of a young age. I was 50 a few days ago. So at 20, my mid 20s to early 30s really set the tone for everything. And I think I would be missing a piece if I didn't, really touch on the foundational pieces that my father instilled in me as well. So he was really the basis of pushing me at a young age, goal setting, and all those things that kind of we all talk about now, but wasn't talked about in the like 70s, 80s. It wasn't nearly as commonplace then as it is now, where everybody's like, "Hey, I have a vision board," or "Hey, I have goals. Hey, I have all these things that my coaches or whomever else that I heard or talked to or saw on the internet said that I should have." It wasn't a thing then, and then that was really forward thinking, 30 years ago, and so I was very thankful for him. But to go back to your question, yeah, it has wavered and it has been tested multiple times. But I think having gone through a lot of that in a earlier stage of my life got me through a lot of these things that were a little bit more traumatic for me, whether that be business or personal, and has served me well.
What did your father do for a living, or where do you feel he got that kind of mindset to be able to teach you and pass it on to you?
That's an excellent question and a very long story. He grew up on the island. He was the superintendent for the power company for, well, not all of it, obviously, but retired as the superintendent for the power company, FPU, for 50 years. So he started out reading meters and basically was running the show by the time he retired 50 years later. So he started when he was 18 and retired at 68-ish. So he was just a different man. He saw things differently. He saw the world differently, and he made sure that I saw them. And it was super thankful for it now. I don't think I loved it too much then, because there was a lot of discipline and things that I really didn't care for. But he was adamant that I wasn't going to go down the same paths, not the same paths as everyone else, but a little bit. There's some truth to that, but it was more of like, you will be the best version of you that you can possibly be. And he did that. Examples of that were just kind of his mindset. I would love to spend 30 minutes of our time telling you about it, but it was just, let's just say that he was forward thinking around things like goal setting and kindness and the way that the world worked as a whole. And there was no doubt in the world that he was not going to let me fail.
That's really great. And as you know, I'm sure, a blessing to have had that, because so many people don't have a parent or a role model that would speak to them that way or teach those kind of concepts at such a young age. And sadly, there's even the opposite, right? Like putting kids down and making them feel horrible. But I think that's really not only awesome, but such an important part of your secrets of your excellence, right?
He is. He was, and I've had 3 in my lifetime. Him being one, and Colonel in the Army being another one that I resonated with. The guys that worked at the company I worked at, he was my third, and I always just this is probably good for you or your listeners or whomever. I always just ended up finding the people that resonated with me. And once I found that, then I would just silently and quietly watch what they did. Soon as, they would let me in their space, then I would just gravitate towards that. And I wouldn't be pushy, and I wouldn't be anything that would be, I don't know, annoying or off-putting to them. It was just about being in their space and presence. And eventually, if you're honest and genuine and authentic, about who you are, you don't have to ask to be in their space. They want you there. And so being blessed enough to have people, kind of scoop me up and show me things that I would have never gotten the opportunity to experience otherwise has been a blessing for me and, my life and success. And as everyone would tell you that, you don't get anywhere on your own. And that's for damn sure. There's not any of us that gets to a level of success by happenstance, especially obviously if you earn it. And so if you're earning success, whether you consider success monetary or life experiences or achievements, whatever you feel success is, you don't get there by yourself. I would say hardly ever.
It reminds me of two things. One being the whole concept of, not only deliberately surrounding yourself by the people that you admire or that you respect or that are of like mind. And that's a very mindful decision, because you also have to cut out the ones that aren't of that. You have to be aware of what comes natural to a human and who they are in this life and what they offer and how they respond to things. And there's so much to learn, but also to make decisions about who you're hanging out with. The other thing that came to my mind, I remember, I don't know, the whole good old boy system, and not that that's a bad thing. I mean, I guess it could be for someone who's not in the good old boy system, but living in a small town, I've definitely seen things like it's who you know. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean like, one door opens to another, to another, to another. So if you are kind of marrying those two concepts together, it can really, have some momentum.
It does. And it did for me, for sure. But I think circling back around, it was definitely, you're right, pushing around the concept of inclusion of the people that you want around your circle and excluding those that don't. Sometimes it's not even intentional. The people that are not meant to be there kind of fall off naturally. You don't have to wake up one day, unless it's toxic, and be like, I'm going to push this person out of my life. I think sometimes they just ebb and flow within the season of whatever you're doing. And those three people, I've certainly sat down and thought about who influenced my life the most. And it's those three, and there's no doubt about it. And probably in that order as well.
Curious how you are, speaking of the ebb and flow, when somebody's kind of migrating out of your life, have you found yourself in the past like fighting that and resisting it and trying to keep them there, even though it seems like the paths are splitting?
Professionally, no, I'm really good at it. Personally, on maybe a relational level, I've probably suck at it a bit. But kind of more on the professional level, I've never resisted it. I've always kind of had a natural aptitude for business. And I don't mean business in like a suit and tie way. I just mean relationships and building whatever you're doing as far as your professional career. So I've never really tried. And I think that's also served me. And when I say I haven't really tried, I don't mean I haven't applied effort. One of my sayings is there's a big difference between applying effort and applying force. And I think you do really well and you serve yourself and others very well as long as you apply effort. As soon as you start applying force, or you're forcing things to happen because you know for a fact this is the way it's supposed to be, that's when things start to seemingly, at least for me anyway, kind of go sideways. And you can feel it and you can see it, whether that's an energy thing or things that are just turning upside down that shouldn't be. And at some point you kind of see it and you're like, what's going on? And if you can evaluate it, a lot of those times, those things are ended up being forced. You force those things. Usually it's not someone else. It's usually you, because you're determined to see it a certain way and you have tunnel vision. And then you're wondering why, you won't let anything else that the universe has to offer into your space because you're forcing this one thing that, quote unquote, the universe doesn't really care for you to have, and not looking at the other options that might be on the table. So I think that has been one thing that served me very well as time has gone on. And I don't think I picked that up from anyone. I think that was just one of my things that I found as what worked for me and what didn't as I evaluated kind of after action reviews on things that failed or things that succeeded.
Yeah, there's kind of like either being in resistance or being in kind of a flow. And that resistance feels like you just kind of running into the same wall over and over again and trying to force something and not getting anywhere. And then there's frustration and anger, resentment, whatever. That reminds me of the saying that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, getting the same results. Like instead of being more open, because when you're in the flow, it's easy, right? It's much easier than when you're trying to force something, right?
It's true. Absolutely.
It's really getting out of our own way and our own agenda, and what's actually the ego mind of thinking you know how something's going to go, and then, backing off of that when you're realizing that you're trying to force it. It reminds me a little bit, going back to the beginning of your story, your mind thought you were going to be this CIA agent or something, right? And you kept trying to do that, trying to do it, but path was leading you elsewhere. And I believe in universal beings or energy or higher power or whatever. It kind of seems funny to me that they put that obstacle in there to make your path change.
It's great.
And it worked. And then for you to actually say that it was a better path for you, I think is really cool.
Yeah, I didn't think it was for such a long time, maybe years, maybe a decade afterwards. I was pretty bent about it. And then being within the tactical industry, ironically, kind of the Paul Harvey version of that story, 10 years later, I became entrenched with a lot of the guys that ran my most respected agency, which is U.S. Marshals, their SOG division, and got an opportunity for their commander. He was like, if you want to come on, you can come. And so that blew my mind that I had the opportunity to go. And so I thought about it for like a month or two, and I had cold feet, and I'm like, what are you doing? Why wouldn't you just jump on this opportunity? And the simple fact was that had passed for me. It wasn't mine anymore. And it was tough. It was tough to go back to him and say, man, thank you so much. I appreciate that, but I'm not going to pursue it. And that was a turning point. I think I was right at the age limit as well. Excuse me. And I was right at the age limit. So I was 30, 35 or 36 at the time. And I just was like, I think 37 at that point, maybe different now, but 37 at that point was the cutoff. And it was just like, this is not the path that was for you. And then it wasn't. I was good where I was at. I was happy. I probably was making more money than I would have with them anyway. Not that, monetary significance is everything, but it certainly does help. So I think starting over again at 37 wasn't overly attractive to me. And then also the passion was gone. I was excited for a second when I had that opportunity, but I think it was resurrecting feelings of 12 plus years earlier that were going to be validated, right? So those feelings and goals were going to be validated. And it took a lot to be like, I don't need that rubber stamp. I don't need to chase something just because I didn't get to complete that. That was a pretty significant thing that I did not pursue.
2 questions about that. One is if you regretted that decision, and the other is when you are at a fork in the road, especially one that's like dangling a carrot in front of you that you thought you wanted forever, how do you make those decisions? What do you pay attention to that helps you to choose the path?
I think you're probably leading in a very good direction. I listen to my gut instinct or your inner voice or whatever you want to label it as. And I think if you're quiet enough and you kind of listen to your soul and in that direction, it kind of leads you, even when you're trying to fight it. There's part of you that's like, yeah, that's just not it. Even when you're trying to convince yourself because the mathematics make sense. Well, of course I'm going to take this position, or of course I'm going to pursue this position. It's just presented itself to me, and I've been wanting to do it forever. Why would I not take it? But then when you go to sleep at night, why doesn't it feel exciting? Why doesn't it feel? Why is there pieces of that don't fit anymore? And I think that's part of your answer. The the other piece of that is, do I regret it? There is, I'm going to answer this sensitively. There's not a piece of me that regrets it. There is a piece of me that wonders what would have happened. And I knew that the day I'd passed on it. I knew that I was going to have a certain amount of something. There was a energy or something that I was going to wonder for the rest of my life why I didn't pursue it and how that's going to feel. But in life, we don't get to choose every single path. We get to choose the path we get. Those paths branch out into other ones, and I just chose not to pursue that one. But I'm never going to sit here and go, "Yep, I didn't choose that one, and it's totally fine." That's probably true. There's probably part of me that right now at 50 years old that would, if it was offered to me today, that I would still consider it. But it was the smart decision, and I don't regret it. But I certainly wonder sometimes how that would have unfolded.
Well, it was a pretty significant carrot being dangled in front of you, seeing that it was a lifelong kind of dream. It almost feels like it was a test of some sort. Definitely gave you a lot of clarity about who you are and the direction that you did want to take your life, because we do have those choices. And I like the way you said, going to bed at night, if it's causing you anxiety or it just doesn't feel good, like that's definitely something to pay attention to. And I don't think everybody pays attention to that.
I think it's there for most people. I think that it's there. I think we either choose to listen to it or we don't. I think some people do have that inner feeling, energy-centric situation stronger than others. I've certainly talked to friends of mine that don't seem to have it as strongly. I think everyone has it. That's my opinion. But I think everyone, it's a matter of how much you want to listen to it. Or if you don't seemingly have a strong inner voice, I mean, have you tried? Or do you care? Is that something that you want to listen to or find? But I seem to have a very strong one. And the times that I've listened to it, most things have turned out pretty damn well. And the times I haven't, probably have turned out less than favorable. So I think that for me, it's definitely a good indicator of which way I'm going to pursue life choices and advances and opportunities and things like that. It seemingly has done pretty well for me so far.
In my observation, I like to think of like a radio station, and if you're not tuned in, it's a lot of static. And to me, the static of the mind is like worry and doubt and second guessing and regret and just lacking in confidence, which then leads to worry and second guessing and all that. So it's almost like the more somebody has all those kinds of thoughts, the less they can hear that inner guidance that's there. And so being able to tune all that stuff out or turn it off, which again, and going back to your foundation, sounds like you had a really good head start on being able to not have worry and doubt and fear and have confidence and, direction. And that helps to tune in so that you can hear that guidance. And I agree with you, Jacques. I believe it's within every human. It's part of being a spiritual being in this physical world, and we're not disconnected from that information. Would you say that helped you to make this decision that it put you on the road and travel in the world? And because you did end whatever work you were doing to go on this trip, is that right? Or was there a buffer?
Pretty significant life decision that wasn't made overnight, actually. It's a lot of things unfolded or cascaded to get me to this point. I guess a little bit more on the personal side. I was married, and then I got divorced, and then this whole sequence was in the last 6 years, 5-6 years. I got divorced, lost both my parents and at different times, and the sequence of life was just a bit challenging and kind of beat me down a bit. I was starting to be very miserable at my job. The company I was with went public, and it didn't do a lot of the things that I was used to doing, comfortable with doing, and I thought they were doing it wrong because we weren't taking care of the end user like we used to. It was more about where our stock prices were and things like that. And so everything was just unfolding in a way that I just was uncomfortable with. And I mean, everything, not just the company, but like life in general.
Mm-hmm.
I was lost a bit. And the only thing that felt good was pursuing something more simplistic. And so I sold my house, I downsized to a smaller house. I had a beautiful parrot, and I rehomed him, and I really went down the rabbit hole of simplifying my life to get to a point where I was able to take this step. And this step was that I wanted to reset my life at close to 50 at that point in time, 48, 49, whatever I was. I just had this feeling. And it wasn't a dream. It wasn't anything else. It was just a feeling. And to be quite honest, I think Amelia was heavy on me, living there my whole life off and on. It was always home. I sold my childhood home, which was a gorgeous piece of property down in the South End. And that was crazy difficult after my dad's passing. And so there was so pieces of that were around the island that I was just burnt. I was just absolutely maxed out as much as you could reasonably be and still kind of have a footing within your own consciousness. I was maxed out. But there was always a part of me that's like, you just need to leave for a while. And it wasn't like you need a vacation. It wasn't that for me. It was like, you need to leave and you need to go do whatever you want to do, whatever that is, in the world. And then when you come back, you can figure out what the next steps are. And so I did that. I did that for the last 2 years. I structured, changed the architecture of my entire life to be able to do this. And I'm shy of a month into doing it. And I cannot tell you how different I feel. I feel, this cathartic release of things that I've been holding on to for God knows how long. It's one of the best things I've ever done. I will also tell you it's one of the hardest things I've ever done. It's very romantic to say that I would like to sell my shit and travel the world. But to do it as a much, much different beast, at least for sure. Like, not 2 weeks, not 3 weeks, not a month, but indefinitely, like when I get ready, I'll go back. Whether that's, you have to figure out how to do that monetarily, whether you have to figure out how to do that from full responsibilities. There's lots of people that say that that's their dream, picking up and going and traveling the world. But I guess my argument would be, is that your dream? Willing to put in the effort, or does it just seem so insurmountable that you can't do it? And I guess for me, so far, which I'm not too far into it at the moment, so far it's been 100% work, and I'm exactly where I should be. But it was a lot of work on the front end to get me to a place where I could comfortably leave, whether that was taking care of my parents that were, sick or whatever. You have to be patient, and that part of your life has to unfold to a point where it's like, okay, now, but you have to put in the work to get to the now, where the now presents itself, and you like take advantage of that opportunity and you do it. I think that's just been my life for the last little while, after career piece for the last 20 plus years, and then kind of a challenging personal life for the last few.
Yeah, wow, that's all great story and great information. And I love just knowing when the time was right. And I think there were some really clear things happening in your life related to your parents that made it clear that it wasn't the right time yet. But so I'm just more curious, does everything you own in your suitcase at this point?
Not quite. I did downsize. I thought I was going to, but I downsized I kind of built this cool, beautiful house on the South End. And I also felt I loved it. Like, it was so cool. It was so me. It had so much character and things that I loved, but I felt like it was a tether. I felt like I was handcuffed to it because it was a lot of property and it was a lot of all these things. And I was like sitting on the couch one day and I was like, this is awesome. I loved it. But to do the next big thing, you got to let it go. You're not made of money. I've been certainly, whatever you want to call it, blessed or, rewarded with hard work. And I have some money, but didn't have enough to just, write checks that I don't cash. I downsized my house and bought a small place. But yes, kind of to answer your question at the moment, yes, I spent months figuring out my suitcase, a backpack.
Oh, wow.
Have everything that I need for the next at least few months. I don't plan on going back to Amelia until Christmas, and then even then maybe questionable. But unless I get sick or whatever, I'm just going to go to the next place. And I don't even know what the next place is. Part of that was I started out years ago, or maybe even a year ago, trying to get a plan. Okay, we're going to go here and here and here. And every time I sat down with it, going back to our energy piece, every time I sat down with it, it didn't feel good. It didn't feel right. And so eventually I was like, that's because you're not supposed to know where you're going. You get to choose a starting point, which was for me almost certainly was going to be London, for a variety of reasons. And so I chose London, and then I was in London for a week, and I was like, I've never rode the Eurostar to Paris. That's kind of cool. So I guess we'll go to Paris for a little while. So I rode the Eurostar, I went to Paris, and I had my backpack, and that's it. And I was determined to have a backpack because I wanted to walk, and I walk on average 10 miles a day, which is, it doesn't sound like a huge number, but walking 10 miles a day every day is a lot.
Sounds like a lot to me.
And I've been fortunate enough to find, kind of some of my friends that just happen to be over here and have a place in Budapest and sleeping on their futon right now. And I couldn't be happier. At night when I go to sleep, I don't really have any of the anxiety that I had back home. And it's never to say that I'm never going back. I mean, I have my family there. When I say family, I mean my friends that are my family, and I love it there. But there was a point where you just know that you got to reset. And this was a piece of my life that was, I guess, the best way to call it for you and anybody that listens to this is it was a calling. It wasn't a dream. It was a calling. And I just listened.
Sounds pretty cool. It's a male version of Eat, Pray, Love, or whatever that book's called.
Maybe so.
I admire you. I think I feel the relief that you're experiencing of, getting rid of the property and the responsibilities and all that. That absolutely is a weight on a person's shoulders on a daily basis. I just can't imagine only having enough stuff for a backpack, but I think it's cool. I think it's really admirable and strong. And, obviously, and going back to what I was saying, is confidence and strength and overcoming fears, recognizing when something just doesn't feel right to help you then to move in the right direction. And so you've done that, sounds like probably daily, if not weekly, in your entire life. But you just gave another example of it when you're looking at your agenda that you wrote that you're not following now.
Yep.
You definitely sound to be a master of tuning in to who you are and what feels right for you, which, again, going and thinking about other people, some folks, they get that gauge from others, right? Like they want other people to tell them what to do. They just don't really trust themselves enough to follow their own path. And what ends up happening is they're living somebody else's dream and they're not necessarily happy about it versus tuning into who they are. And one of the things I help people to do is to actually do that, because most people don't know how to. They haven't stopped long enough to say, who am I? Like, what do I want to do with my life? And why am I uncomfortable in certain situations? And what can I do to make myself more comfortable? Changing topics a little bit. You and I are both sports cars lovers. I don't know if you knew that or not, but I've seen your post over the years. And how did you walk away from that?
I had the Lambo that won concourse at Amelia.
I saw that.
Crazy. And I couldn't imagine in a million years as a young man, young boy, that would ever cross my path. That's for sure. But it just, like some of the other things we had in our conversations, it just literally happened. And it was just something that I semi-pursued, but also just let kind of come. It just came to me, and it was beautiful. And I've already sold it. I owned it for a year. And then once I was like, this is time for me to do the things that I've been talking about. I rehomed it at Monterey this year in California, so it sold at the auction in Monterey. And so I don't think I'll ever table the car thing because it's been since I was a kid. It's been a passion of mine. I look at cars even when I'm over here when I walk down the street
Yeah.
or whatever. I laughed and chuckled when I walked out the door to Budapest. The first car that was parked outside the hotel was a Porsche, and I was like, okay. Uh, so it always can be a part of my life, but it wasn't part of my life for now. Like maybe later on it'll be resurrected or whatever, and that's fine. And I'm sure at that point it'll be welcomed. But for now, it's just not my priority right now. My priority is my mental health, my goal setting and calling path, whatever label is probably appropriate. That's my priority, and you can't onto everything and do that. You have to choose the things that are going to get you to the place, or you just don't go. You can be like, yeah, I want to keep the house, or yeah, I want to keep the cars, or yeah, I want to keep all this stuff, and you still have a great life doing that, but you're just not all of the juice out of the lemon. You're going to leave a lot of that stuff in there, and I wasn't prepared to leave it in.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about kind of mindset and mental. What are your beliefs on being your best self related to the type of food you're eating, what you're drinking, your physical fitness, your sleep, your faith, these things? Have you observed that helps you to be either stronger or weaker in your life?
It certainly does. I'm very, very heavy into fitness. I think it helps my mental game more than it even does my physical game. I love being fit, of course, but it helps it helps me keep a mental state of lucidity that I don't find any other way. So for me, it's a gym thing. It's not a running thing. It's not anything else. I love the gym. I love being in there. I love having my headphones on, and that's how I like it. So it 1,000,000,000% for me keeps me lucid. It's how I figure out life. It was actually one of the only things that I dedicated to myself or made a promise to myself that I would make happen every day during this journey, and I have.
And tell me how you're doing that. Are you finding gyms, or are you just
wherever I go? Before I get there, I find a gym, and then I make sure I go. Crazy as it sounds, which usually isn't. If anybody's ever done travel, you know how exhausting it is on your body. I'm actually in better shape now than I was when I left, which I find very difficult to believe. But between the walking and forcing myself to find a gym every day, and I kind of look at that as my job. That's your job. Your job is to figure yourself out, travel, and find a gym, and be kind. And that's your job, and that's gonna be my job until I get back. That's it.
How about food, like how you eat and how that affects your mind and body, but also drink?
I'm a big tequila guy, so I have my tequila here and there. And tequila seems to treat me quite well, so I like my little bit of tequila whenever I find it. It's prevalent in Europe, but I usually won't drink anything if I don't have it. Food, I'm a very clean eater, and by clean I mean I usually eat, chicken and vegetables and things that most Americans would look at more of a dietary thing, but I splurge too, but I'm in Europe, right? There's places here that I'm probably not going to have a croissant any place else in the world that tastes good as I have those things. But they're pretty, once or twice a day things that I eat intermittently versus like I'm here on vacation and I'm going to eat everything in sight and I'll deal with the consequences of that. No, that's not how this is going to shake down this time.
Yeah.
So, it's an everyday thing, and it's something that I'm committed to. 1,000,000,000% a priority of mine, and has been since probably my whole life. It always ebbs and flows. I think we all fall out of favor with our diet or gym plan or fitness plan. But at this point in my life, kind of being aware more of my mortality at 50, it's at the forefront. It's here. So
what have you observed at the times in your life when you're not exercising or eating right or drinking well? Like, what have you noticed is related to your ability to be your best self?
I certainly compromise. I think it would be the things that you would probably think it would be. It's not horrible probably, but it's not, I don't get the most out of me because there's a certain confidence level that comes with being fit. There's a certain confidence level that comes with eating right. There's a certain confidence level that when you put your clothes on, they fit a certain way. And when you have those things, I think you're more confident in your own being, which also gives you confidence in the choices that you make. And then it also translates to the relationships that you have, whether that be your personal relationships or professional ones. That confidence level, spills over in usually, hopefully, in a positive way. And, that's always served me quite well. And I think I've seen it, and you probably have too, in other people, that I don't, unless you're just being arrogant, it's not going to serve you unfavorably.
Great insights there. I personally recognize, but talk to people, like we all have clothes, and well, some of us have clothes in closets, some have them in backpacks, but there's certain outfits, like I have outfits that I just hardly ever wear, and every once in a while I'll put it on and I don't feel as good as I feel in maybe another outfit that's more my style or just fits me better, or I just feel good in it. And it does go back to confidence, right? And everything you just said pointed back to confidence, which I'd never put all that together before. So I think that's really neat, because I feel like confidence is like a bowling ball, and you throw it down the aisle and it just totally eliminates worry and doubt and fear and second guess, like all of those things that make the static. The confidence just destroys it all and gets rid of it for the positive. But then you brought up another important point, is that you add ego in with confidence and it becomes arrogance, right? So you've always struck me as somebody who was pretty humble, although very confident. You and I have never really had a conversation, but I've observed that over the years. And congratulations on being able to achieve that, because it's, again, another thing that's not easy to achieve. And it does take deliberateness and mindfulness and work. It doesn't come easy, especially, if somebody has money or has success or has, achieved great things. The ego loves to get involved in that. It just wants to roll in the hay and like have a good time with that. Next thing you know, somebody's just arrogant. And to me, that's not the healthiest way to live, but it also can end up in an avalanche. Might seem like you're riding high for a while, but typically crashes and burns. But Jacques' phone has cut out, and I am sad to say we have lost the connection. I do want to thank you, Jacques, and bless you on your journeys. And it sounds amazing. And I look forward to seeing where you're heading and all. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your months around the world. And maybe I'll see you back in Amelia one day. Well, that was a really great interview. And I really admire Jacques for the confidence and strength that he has to not only make some of the decisions he's made in his life, but also to keep moving forward without knowing what tomorrow brings. And talk about trusting gut and intuition and inner guidance, of having no agenda, no plan other than the plan of being happy and finding himself and enjoying life and enjoying the journey along the way. So many great things to learn from him and his experiences and what he's doing now. For all the listeners, I want you to know that you can get free goodies and opt in for any of my businesses, whether it's the mental training, my Mind Mastered app, hypnosis, and even Amelia Shotgun Sports. There's some free goodies at dawngrant.com/free. Follow me on any of the social medias. Got some great content for you there, some free tips and all. And come see me at Amelia Shotgun Sports. So thanks, Jacques, for being a part of this and sharing your life and your journey with us. And I'll see you all next week.
Thank you for tuning in to the Mind Mastered Secrets of Excellence with Dawn Grant. Whether you're an elite athlete or pursuing success in your career or personal life, Dawn Grant's expertise and insights are here to guide you. Don't forget to visit dawngrant.com/free to grab your exclusive free resources, hypnosis audios, mental training tools, and even a golf cart at her club. If you enjoyed today's episode, follow, rate, and share this podcast. Stay connected with Dawn on all social media platforms for more inspiration, tips, and updates. Remember, mastering your mind is the key to unlocking your full potential. Until next time, keep pushing your limits and striving for excellence.